Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of people, successful people from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome an accomplished author from Mumbai, India, Kiran Manral. Kiran, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Ashutosh.
Thank you. Kiran is an author of 16 books. Her latest books, 30 Women Who Changed India and Rising 2.0 are empowering narratives. This she wrote in 2022. Then she got another book called Rising 2.2, which is the story of 20 more women who changed India in 2024. Kiran has also received the Women Achievers Award by the Young Environmentalist Association in 2013, and she was named amongst the 75 iconic Indian women in STEAM by the Red Dot Foundation and Beyond Black. So, Kiran, my first question, you've written across diverse genres: romance, horror, science fiction, psychological thrillers, and more. What draws you to experiment with such varied storytelling styles?
To be honest, I think it is the fact that I have a low boredom threshold.
Mhm.
So I really, really admire those who can stick to a consistent genre throughout. And, there are authors who specialize in mythological fiction, historical fiction, thrillers, whatever, and I have romance for that matter. That is easy for the publishers to slot them, also for the book stores to shelf them accordingly. Like this author is going to write romance, so it goes
Mm.
here. But unfortunately, I have been quite peripatetic in my own writing. I think I read in a similar way. I read across genres. So my reading has spanned, if you ask me my favorites, it would be Woodhouse and Stephen King.
Mhm.
So it goes, from
Yeah,
humor to horror.
absolutely.
And I think that's how my writing is too.
Amazing. And I completely understand what you're saying because I have written across God knows how many different types of genre. So I agree with you, but I'm going to use your term low threshold of boredom. So I love that. But tell me, Kiran, how has the reception of your books, which are varied across genres, and how do you find some of the categories or genres that you work with resonate more with Indian readers than others?
Uh, Ashutosh, as you know, romance always sells very well.
Hmm.
So romance, if you write a romance, it will get picked up.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I'm not at the stage of my life where I can write romance anymore. So that phase is done and gone.
Right.
In terms of reception, I think nonfiction really works the best in the Indian market. I think in India, we do have a tendency to read for utility rather than read for pleasure.
Hmm.
So anything that will give you information and knowledge is seen as not wasting your time reading. I think the culture is read to study, not read for pleasure.
Hmm.
So that sort of percolates in our reading habits. So I find my books, which are nonfiction, tend to get a better visibility and better reception.
Hmm.
And the books that sort of defy description, like my science fiction, my horrors, my thrillers, they have a very niche audience. They're the audience who loves offbeat kind of things, and it's almost cultish. But they have their own audience, of course.
Correct.
Humor is a difficult genre to sell.
Yes.
It's a very difficult genre to write. I think the most difficult and a difficult genre to sell.
Very, very interesting. But your work also has, some recurring themes like relationships, identity, and resilience. Are these intentional choices or do they emerge naturally as you write?
Just have a cough. Sorry. Um, Do I do it intentionally? Honestly, I don't think so. I think when you sit down to write, you're an author yourself, it basically begins with whatever is in your head at that point of time, right? That you want to get it
Correct.
out. So if it is loneliness, for instance, at the face of the window, then it comes out of the character of Mrs. McNally, who is a 78-year-old retired Anglo-Indian school teacher who's all by herself. So
Mm.
the character sort of builds up with whatever is going through either your life or what you're experiencing looking around at the people around you. So
Mm.
for me, because Definitely I derive from being a woman. That's my primary experience, and
Yeah.
that's the primary base that I draw from. And also from my friends, from family members, from women around me. So I think a lot of the themes that recur in my books come from the women around me as well as from my own life. And I think I try to put it in the spotlight in certain ways, uh, whatever is disturbing, dystopian, whatever is not really talked about, I want to put those in my books.
Right. Very interesting. Your work also, and I think you partially answered the question, often includes very strong, multifaceted female characters. How do you approach crafting these characters?
I have a very simple rule, Ashutosh. I want to write women who will be disliked.
Okay.
Yeah, so my female characters are not characters who are sugar and spice and all that's nice. They're disturbing characters. They do things that are not what good women do. They will not toe the line. They will be disturbed mentally, perhaps like in Missing Presumed Dead. They will be homicidal. They will be adulteresses. They will be all the things that women are not supposed to be, because I think I want to show the side of women that most people are not comfortable looking at.
Right.
And not many people, not many writers tend to do that. I mean, I'm not appropriating womanhood as something that I experience and therefore I should write about it. But I do see in lots of writing, women are defined in a certain way that this is how they will behave and this is what they will do, and they will stay within these certain confines or whatever society compels. And if they're breaking out, they're going to be punished for it. I don't want to show them breaking out. I want to say this is who we are.
Right.
We are as good or as bad as men. And let's just accept it.
Amazing. Can you give me an example of a character that you developed?
Okay. In Missing Presumed Dead, for instance, she's a woman with she has a mental illness, and she's very disturbed because of that. She also leaves home and goes and shacks up with a man she's barely met a couple of hours ago. And she's left her children behind. And she has not returned for many days. This is not what mothers are supposed to do, right?
Right.
But I'm not making any excuses for her. I'm not making any apologies for her. This is just what she is.
Fascinating. I must pick up some of your books and read them. But another thing that I have seen with authors, and I do that myself, is that a lot of my own personal experiences and the people I know well become the base for a lot of the characters and experiences that I like to write about. How do you handle your personal experiences, and how do you let them influence the stories you tell?
I think that is normal for all authors, all creative work, not just necessarily writing. You do draw from the personal, but then you come to a point where you transcend that. After there's this, I don't know what to call it, a saying or a statement that, your first book will always be your own life.
Correct.
Camouflaged in a certain way.
Yes.
Or the character in your first book. And you write it out. It's like a little bit of navel gazing to a certain extent. And then you go beyond it. You cannot possibly base everything based on your life, because our lives are very boring.
Absolutely.
As authors, we're just sitting in front of the desk and writing. But the mind is very active. The mind is going places. The mind is doing things. So how do I take experiences from my life? I think little bits here and there do come in. Like, for instance, The Reluctant Detective and Kitty Party Murder. It's based on a character called K. Mehra. She's the protagonist. She's a suburban housewife who lives in a gated complex in Mumbai, fighting with weight issues with a 6-year-old. Very familiar. Very familiar. K. Mehra, Kiran Manral, okay, call it what you may. But that was the first book, and that got out of the way. Then the other books came along with other characters. Were they based on my life experiences? Not necessarily. I think you sort of draw from what you read, like Missing Presumed Dead is a memory from childhood of a woman who I played with the kids when I was young. And she just left one day and never came back home. And that sort of stayed in my head, like which kind of mother leaves her kids and doesn't come back? So I think you draw from various things.
Right. Well said. My next question is, and I've asked this from many authors, and I go through this sometimes myself, is writer's block. And there are days when I don't write at all. The last 3 months, I've been writing in a frenzy. So I've actually finished 2 new books.
Wonderful.
And then suddenly I find I don't write for 4 or 5 months at all. How do you overcome writer's block when you're working on a book or a short story?
So I have very conflicting views on this. I do believe that once you're written out, the field needs to lay fallow for a while, and you need to marinate yourself in new experiences, new reading, new watching, new viewing, new learning before you can come back to creating again. That is very essential. That is an essential part of the creative process. But I also believe that as a creator, as a writer, you need to be at your craft every day. It is, a surgeon will not say that, I've got surgeon's block today, I don't want to operate. A miner will not say, I've got miner's block, I'm not going to go down into the coal mines. There's no option. That's your job. That's your profession. If you call yourself a professional writer, you sit at the desk. There are days when I will sit and I will just be changing fonts and putting full stops, commas, changing all that. But I am with the work, so to speak. It's not every day that you'll be inspired enough to write. It's like Riyaz. Treat it like Riyaz. If you're not going to be working on that particular, your magnum opus, your big manuscript, your short story, do some other writing, do a blog post, do social media post, write a letter, but stay with the writing. Musicians, singers, if they're not doing their Riyaz every day, it will show in their singing. If you're not with your work every day, it will show in your writing. So just stick to the writing, whatever the form, it's immaterial. That's my take on writing, writer's block.
That's a very disciplined take on writing, and I'm delighted to hear from you that, treat it like Riyaz, which means write something at an appointed time every day. Kiran, now let's talk about your Rising series. I think you already got 2 books in this, 30 Women Who Changed India, and then you've got 20 more women or Rising 2.0, 20 more women who changed India. What was the inspiration to create the Rising series? And how did the idea of these books come to you?
Let me not take credit for this. This was the editor at Rupa, Shaswati, who approached me and said that, we should do a book on women, inspiring women. And we sort of went back and forth on this. And I don't think there was a brief per se. She would give me a free hand as to who I wanted to include in the book. And my thought process was very clear. I wanted women from the time India was thought of as India, a composite from pre-independence time to the current times. So, but not really historical, not from, the medieval era, from contemporary India, say from the turn of the century to the turn of the next century. My God, we're in the next century already. Okay. So from the early 1900s to independence and post-independence to 2000s, 2020, that was and it's quite a wide gamut. I wanted definitely to include women who had not been heard about. But I had to cushion them with women who were very heard about. So there's a mix of women who are very familiar names and their stories have been heard 1,000 times over, which doesn't diminish the need to be told again. But there are women which most people have never heard about. And I think that was the way I approached it. And also, you sort of try to see that you're inclusive and you have people from across the country and across all kinds of orientations, etc., etc.
Interesting. I've also published 4 or 5 books with Rupa, and I think they're great people and they give wonderful inputs. But how did you decide on which women to feature in Rising and Rising 2.0? What were some of the criteria?
As I just said, I looked at women who had done something astounding with their lives to me. So this could be somebody like an M.S. Subbulakshmi, who was from the Devdasi community, but went on to become a Carnatic singing icon in a very Brahminical space. Uh, it could be somebody like Sonal Mansingh, who was born into such a privileged family, then married into privilege, but gave it all up for dance. It could be Ma Shweta Devi. So women who had sort of defied a lot of societal norms to pursue their passions and to get to where they were. Also, women who were the first in many things. So you have women who have become the first pilots of the Indian Air Force. You've got women who've done something first. You've got women, I think, who have very gently and quietly lived their lives and not been known, like somebody like a Janki Amal, who is a botanist. Back when, women didn't even study and get into further education, she went into the USA to Baba as a scholar on a scholarship, and then she went to the UK to study botany at Kensington at the Muse. And this is incredible because this is pre-independence time. Then she was called back to India by Jawaharlal Nehru to help with, the various things in Indian horticulture. Not many people know about these women. So I think that was my primary thing, that there are women who have done wonderful things much before, this whole feminism even became a thing.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about them.
Absolutely. And in all the interviews that you did, Kiran, did you notice any common themes or traits?
A lot.
Because there were some vastly different backgrounds.
So some of them, obviously, they're deceased, so there was no question of interviews. It was just a matter of compiling whatever is out in the public domain. Some were interviews, and some, even though they were alive, I was not able to get interviews for whatever reason, but I sort of compiled whatever I could put together through research, extensive research. The common trait, I think, is a very single-minded doggedness about going after what you want and not letting anything stop you, and an unfailing belief in your own abilities. I think the world knocks us women down so much at various points. You get, I think this generation of girls is wonderful. They've got wonderful opportunities, but I'm talking about a generation, 1 or 2 generations prior. You were meant to confine yourself to domesticity first and then look at a career. So your career was either a teacher. So, you're home when the kids are home, and you're home when the school holidays are, or a bank job, which is a safe, secure job and respectable. Anything that goes beyond the norm or what is comfortable is not really accepted. And I think these women decided, okay, I'm going to be a dancer. I'm going to be a dancer. I'm going to sing. I'm going to sing. I'm going to write books, and I'm going to travel to the interiors of India and go to the villages in Madhya Pradesh to ask about the Rani of Jhansi, Lakshmi Bai, alone. I will do that, and I will write that book on Lakshmi Bai. This is Mahashweta Devi. I'm not happy in my marriage. I will get a divorce. I will leave my husband. Back then.
Correct.
The courage it would have taken to do this back then, to leave your husband and to go off to Singapore and then, of course, become Captain Lakshmi Saigal. Immense courage for those times. So I think the courage and the determination to do what you want to do, that was a common theme. That was the biggest thing that I saw. And I think I would like young girls and boys to read this book and to take that away, that if these women could do it back then, why can't I do it now?
Absolutely. Well said. My next question is that how do these women's stories reflect a broader societal change, or, support modern current women to face a lot of the challenges they face?
As I just said, the opportunities today are immense. A lot of these women did not have these opportunities back then, but despite that, they went ahead and did what they could. Now, if they could do it without the kind of societal support, financial support, spousal support, familial support that women these days do tend to have, why can't the women today do the same? There is, today education is the given. I know I'm talking from a place of privilege, urban privilege, but education is a given. People are looking, our Prime Minister is talking about Beti Padhao. So people are understanding that girls also need to be educated. These women back then had to fight for basic education.
Right.
jobs are, there is a certain percentage that women are supposed to be, on boards and all that. But back then, women couldn't even, Cornelia Sarabji, for instance, couldn't even get her degree because women weren't allowed to be at the bar.
Yeah.
And she had to wait so many years to get a degree. So these are the battles that women have faced. And I'm hoping that, there are lots more stories, of course, than the ones I've taken.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that when these stories come forward, then the readers, it's not just young girls and boys, anybody who wants to read them, realize that there's so much, that we're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Absolutely.
They've done it before.
Yeah.
And, whenever some young girl will say, I'm not a feminist, I don't believe in feminism. And what do you not like about feminism? You're conflating it with militant feminism, with man-hating, which is not feminism.
Correct.
All feminism says is that, men and women are equal and should be getting equal rights. And do you not like having money of your own, a job of your own, education, right to vote, right to not be considered property, right to not to have reproductive rights, although that's happening in America right now? Do you not like all these rights? These are what feminists fought for. So somehow I think I'm hoping that whoever reads it takes these little things away from the books.
Well said. I have time for two more questions. I think my next question you've partly answered. Do you see the Rising series contributing to a larger discourse on women's empowerment and equality in India? And if so, how?
That's not for me to say, right? Ashutosh, I would like it to, definitely. I'll be hopeful that it does. But that's for the readers, and that's for the lady out there who is, in that space. And I know that many schools have picked up the book for their libraries. I know that, people are gifting these books to the young girls in their families. So I hope in some way it will contribute to some conversations, some questions, some discussions. One can hope as a writer.
Absolutely. And my last question to you, do you envision expanding the Rising series further? And if so, what themes would you like to explore?
I would love to, but that's up to the publisher, and then that also, you're an author, you know how it works. That's up to the readers to buy it enough so the publisher thinks that it's worth publishing more in the series.
Okay.
So if the series sells well enough, I'm hoping that there should be more of it. And if there is more of it, definitely there are so many women doing incredible things right now, fighting so many battles. And it's not just in spaces, they are exploring spaces which women never had access to before.
Correct.
I think I would like to speak about those women who are doing so many wonderful things in STEM and space and technology. I think that's what I would like to focus on.
Well said. And on that note, Kiran, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. I have made a mental note of the phrase threshold of boredom. I'm going to use it. Thank you for talking to me about your books. You gave us some very interesting examples. And then we spent a little time talking about your Rising series. And, I've often said this also that, 50% of the earth has to be exactly equal to the other 50%. And I'm not sure why these differences come up, but you have given me one interesting thought. I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter. I'm going to buy both your books and I'm going to start reading out some of the stories to her as and when she starts hearing them and understanding them. I think that's a very powerful message. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on, Ashutosh.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.